Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Can I respectfully ask all members to put their mobile phones onto silent mode, please? The first item on the agenda is the council summons, to which we have received the following apologies for absence. Councillors Ayoub, Cummings, Faye Heptonstall, Councillor Khan and Councillor Mayhew. Are there any additional apologies to be recorded, please? Yes. Thank you. Councillor Appleyard.
Councillor Law's running late, but she'll be here shortly.
We've got that. Are there any further apologies to be noted? Thank you. Agenda item 2 is members' declarations of interest. Will members declaring an interest please identify themselves and their interest clearly and complete the usual yellow forms before the end of the meeting? Firstly, are there any disclosable pecuniary interest to be declared? Are there any other interests to be declared? Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 3, which is to receive and confirm minutes of the January council meeting. Are these minutes moved? Thank you. Are these minutes seconded? Thank you. All those in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 4 is to deal with such announcements as I may decide to lay before council. Colleagues, since our last meeting, I am pleased to report that I have undertaken a full and varied diary of engagements, officially opening the Rhubarb Festival, which was an honour and a delight to see so many visitors to our city centre. The opening of Hamilton Springs Care Home in South Emsall, which gave me a really good insight into the support and care we have available for our elderly citizens. And the Care for Us Awards evening shows just how inspirational our young people in our care can be. We have also had many visitors to the parlour this month: school children, ladies from the Seroptimus International, and Swedish bishops and their clergy, to name but a few. Our Armed Forces champion, Councillor Josie Pritchard, and I had a very interesting day observing the E-Rifles Army Cadet Force Training Day in York. Blue plaques have been unveiled to honour people including Barbara Castle and 9 Pomfretians from the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry who were awarded the Victoria Cross. Finally, you will recall that we had to halt our Festival of our Remembrance service partway through due to a medical emergency. Fortunately, the gentleman who had the emergency has gone on to make a full and extremely good recovery. This is down to the resuscitation efforts of the Mayor and Mayoress of Featherstone, Councillor Dwayne Longley and ex-Wakefield District Councillor Tracy Austin, and the Commanding Officer, Flight Lieutenant Luke Harvey of the Air Cadets. I was delighted to host a civic reception and present them with National Resuscitation Awards and a Mayor Says Thank You certificate to all of those present. Also present at that meeting was the gentleman who had suffered the emergency at the cathedral, who genuinely has made an amazing recovery. Agenda item 5 and 6 are to consider the Council's revenue, budget and council tax, capital and investment strategy, capital programme and treasury management strategy reports for 2025-2026. We will take all of these items together. Cabinet considered the proposals contained in these reports on the 18th of February 2025 and agreed that the recommendations should be submitted to Council for approval. I now call upon the leader, Councillor Denise Jeffreys, to move the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, members of Council, members of public, I'd like to propose our budget for 25-26 to Council. A lot has changed since our last budget. We have a new Labour government with a new approach, And really, when you think about what has happened this last week, somebody once said, and it's quoted a lot, a week's a long time in politics. Well, it certainly has been for the Prime Minister, trying to pull Europe and America and Ukraine together. And I'm sure we all wish every success for that to happen. A very dangerous and difficult time. We have a new government with a new approach. They've inherited a financial mess from the last government, and they started to build and fix the foundations of our economy. That begins with restoring stability of our public finances, which is an absolute precondition for good government and a successful country. But not all of the changes have been easy, but they are the base from which we'll build a stronger economy, drive more investment, and implement long-term reforms in both our private and public sector. And that theme of taking long-term decisions is the one I want to focus on today. It's equally important in every part of government. We don't pretend, either nationally or at the local level, that we get everything right. Our politics became far too short-term. We lived with the political soap opera of the Conservative government for far too long. But now we have a different approach. A government making grown-up decisions in the national of interest rather than fighting each other. Facing up to significant challenges our country faces, and again, as I've said, what they're dealing with at the moment. Investing in our public services, protecting working people, and returning us to economic responsibility. That fresh approach is already having a positive impact for our district. 14 years of failure can't be undone in a few months, and that change takes time. But a government focused on the right things, taking consistent decisions, having a strong approach to partnership, working with local communities. That all creates the conditions we need to succeed. I know that every elected member in this chamber came into politics because we can make a huge difference to the lives of local people. We're playing our part. We're a well-run council, which is illustrated by the fact we now expect to have one of the lowest council tax in West Yorkshire. We take decisions based on long-term, not on short-term soundbites, or what might be the easiest thing to say in this chamber. And we listen to the voices of our communities. But as a country, far too long, we've not placed the value on local government that we should. Local government is at the heart of the communities. When people need help, we are the first in line of defence. But we need to see that change. Some change has already started. We've already seen an announcement of some new funding. In the autumn budget, there was important support for us, including our social care. And there was also critical help for some public sector partners that we work with every day, including a record investment in our NHS to help provide the care people need and deserve. With thousands more appointments, more beds and improvements to more of our hospitals, and increased education funding, including a major investment in school building, more breakfast clubs and thousands of new teachers in key subjects. There is a lot more to do. We need a multi-year funding settlement which will help councils to plan better. And that decision, how we allocate resources, will be based on need more than they were under the previous government. But together, we can take this opportunity to reset and move forward with growing confidence into a more positive future. To do that, we need to focus every day on the priorities of our communities, work hard to provide the best value for money for local taxpayers, and to take the difficult but responsible decisions we need for the district to prosper. We need to work constructively with our new government, demonstrating that Wakefield welcomes investment, highlighting that we're a stable, well-run council that gets things done, and we're a place that can be a reliable partner to work with. If we do that well, we can take the opportunity to set our area up for a long-term success. What does that mean for our council? It means that we can continue to deliver good frontline services based on what people want, that we need to support housing and business growth so that we can provide great opportunities for local communities. And that we need to take responsible and at times difficult decisions on our budget so that we are sustainable for the future. In order to do that, we're going to rely on our dedicated councillors and our experienced team of local government officers to utilise all of that expertise across our partners, and most importantly, to harness the incredible potential that there is in our communities. I would like to say thank you for all the hard work of elected members across this chamber working hard for their communities, and to everyone we partner within the public, private and voluntary sector. We've an amazing team here in Wakefield. Everybody is passionate about our area, willing to chip in to make that difference, and with such a strong commitment to serving the public. In particular, I want to pay tribute to the Deputy Leader. He plays a crucial joint leadership role together with me to benefit the Council and the District. And I also want to highlight the strong team that we have in Cabinet. They work tirelessly every day to deliver for our communities. And it's those communities that we have our greatest strengths. Today, I'm proposing a budget which will help build on their contribution in every corner of this district. Our budget for 25-26 is based on some key principles which underpin everything we're proposing. These have been developed after feedback from around 1,600 people during our engagement exercise in November and January. Firstly, we've made sure we retain a strong focus on protecting our frontline services as much as we can. It was clear that residents want us to do the basics well, maintaining our roads, emptying our bins and recycling more, supporting stronger, safer communities and great high streets, improving our environment, including our parks and green spaces, caring for our most vulnerable residents, and giving young people the best possible start. Secondly, people understand that we can only protect services by increasing our income in some areas. They know we've a legacy of underfunding from the Tories when they were in government. They left us with a budget gap of over 39.4 million in 25-26. There was strong support for our work to attract more external funding, an acknowledgement that fees and charges may need to increase for some things, and an understanding that council tax has to be part of that solution in balancing our budget. Thirdly, people want us to be more efficient and to use technology more when we can. Feedback was very clear that we should do everything we can before cutting frontline services. Using technology to deliver services differently and more flexible in a way that works for residents. Changing services and process to be more efficient and customer focused. And redesigning services based on new trends for how people use them, rather than continuing with how we've always done things. We're optimistic that we can deliver on these principles because of our track record. We have some great stories to tell where we're delivering high-quality services at the same time as being more efficient. Our excellent children's services is recognised around the region and nationally. We continue to deliver for vulnerable children at the same time as managing rising costs across the sector, something that's proving very difficult elsewhere. Our street lighting replacement programme has saved us 7 million every year on energy costs, replacing legacy bulbs with modern LEDs. We review our homeless provision during 24, saving more than 1 million on hotel accommodation at the same time as delivering better outcomes through placing more families in longer-term housing. We've involved our communities in an incredible year of culture as part of our year 2024. Over 200,000 attended over 1,000 events sponsored by 126 community partners. 22,000 attended this weekend at the Rhubarb Festival. 6,000 attended the first day of WX, a great success. Our award-winning parks and green spaces go from strength to strength, with 5 green flags across the district. including the latest award for Pontefract Castle, which was also awarded Green Heritage Site Accreditation. We've delivered significant investment in capital projects across the district, with more investment planned for 25-26. Some highlights include 25 million in our highways capital budget. Excuse me. This will help maintain roads, footpaths, cycleways, as well as deliver major highways project and replace our vehicle fleet. 2 million for flood, land drainage and contaminated land schemes. 14 million for the ongoing city centre library and museum scheme. Almost 5 million for climate change initiatives. 22 million for schools, including school maintenance, early years expansion and delivery of school places. Over 26 million for regeneration schemes, including the ongoing external funded schemes in Castleford and Wakefield. 16 million for property infrastructure works, including the County Hall roofs. It's not falling down, by the way. It just wants a roof repairing. Just thought I might just get that in. 4 million for technology and digital transformation. Members will see spades increasing in the ground over the next couple of years as our capital programme gains momentum. And we attract more and more private investment into our area to supplement public funding for our regeneration work. Finally, we have a track record of success in running the council well. As I've said, we expect to have one of the lowest council tax anywhere in West Yorkshire. That brings me to our proposals for 25-26. As council will know, we've been working intensively to meet a 39.4 million budget challenge for next year. It's been a difficult process. It's been the most difficult budget that we've had to do for many a year. But if we get this right, we'll have a stable platform to build on for the next few years. Crucially, our budget will no longer be underpinned by the use of reserves. To create that platform, today I'm proposing that we save 29 million from a mix of efficiencies, generating more income and making changes to services. That includes saving 2.5 million by improving how the council manages commissioning and contracting arrangements, rationalising organisational and business support processes by 2.4 million, saving over 1 million by reducing resilience on hotels for homeless provision, generating savings of 3.9 million by changing the way some adult and social care services work, reducing spending on costly external placement in children's social care, saving 1.4 million by having more in-house provision, saving 2 million through the review of the council's property and facilities management arrangements, raising 1.9 million by increasing some fees and charges, saving 3.7 through technology and digital transformation. Our success has been based generally by listening to our communities and reflecting on what they say. We've continued with that approach again this year. Members will note that we're not carrying on with proposals to vary the opening time of libraries, museums and castles, and neither are we changing the frequency of garden waste collection in this budget. These were the things that we got a lot of feedback from the public during the consultation process. We found other ways of balancing our budget. Whilst we make these changes, your local council will be still providing an extra 7.8 million of funding to care for our most vulnerable adults, spending 1.2 million more on children and families, more support across social care and short breaks, investing 3 million in our parks and open spaces, providing 2.2 million more to support children getting to school, particularly those with special education needs, coordinating 5.5 support as part of the government's household support fund, with the majority funding being allocated through supermarket vouchers to the public. Year in and year out, we demonstrate the difference having a Labour council makes. Our workforce are our biggest asset. Some of these proposals have a significant impact on staffing, and that will mean change for staff in how they deliver their roles. We're not trying to hide that, but I'd like to pay tribute to the work of our recognised trade unions, Unison, GMB and Unite, who've worked with us as the budget proposals have developed. By working constructively, we've now reached a position where the changes will be managed through a voluntary process for staff. Getting to this stage, testament is the hard work of trade unions, senior officers leading on this process. Council, the savings and efficiency proposals I've set out still leave us with a budget gap of 9 million for next year. We're acutely aware that it's a difficult time for people across our district. The Tory party have left an economy struggling for growth following years of high inflation and cost of living pressures. Public services right across the country close to collapse and a financial black hole at the heart of government. It's going to take some time to recover. Baked into the Conservative plans for our national finances was an expectation that local government will be funded by a combined 4.99% increase in council tax and adult social care precept. I know this is a difficult decision. It's one that the Labour group would rather not take. But this decision, we can raise a further 1.9 million, which we desperately need. It's absolutely crucial to help us protect essential frontline services. It will mean an extra £1.65 per week for a Band D household and £1.10 for Band A household. As I've said, following this decision, we will expect to have one of the lowest council tax in West Yorkshire, and we'll continue to support those in need through our council tax support schemes. I know this proposal will be debated at length today, and there will be some strong views about it. But anyone who opposes it needs to spell out clearly what local services they will cut to plug the funding gap. This budget will provide a stable platform for the council and set us up strongly for the future. We're entering into a phase of grown-up politics, judged on how we deliver for our communities, not on what sound bites we can come up with. Opposition members are entitled to oppose our budget today, but our residents are also entitled to know what the impact of their opposition would be. What is your alternative? If you're not prepared to spell it out, then you've no credibility to oppose our plan. Politics is more about than shouting out from the sidelines and opposing things without offering an alternative. Then if you're not backing Labour's budget today, you need to set out clearly what services you're planning to cut. Anyone voting against this budget today needs to be aware of the consequences of not setting a legal budget or an illegal budget. Commissioners could be brought in to run this council. They won't have a social conscience. They would run it as a business. And what good would that be to the people of this district? This controlling group are taking a long-term decision which will give our district a brighter future. Colleagues, we have one of the lowest council levels of council tax in the region. We have protected frontline services. We have protected our reserves for the future. We have upheld our policy of no compulsory redundancies. I commend our budget to the council.
Is the report seconded? Councillor Hemingway, would you like to speak now or would you like to speak later? Thank you. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to second this Labour budget, which protects frontline services and invests in our communities. All of us in this chamber know the circumstances continue to be tough for local government. The legacy of massive budget cuts under Tory austerity, rising demand for council services, and during the last few years, the impact of high inflation. All of these have combined to squeeze revenue budgets for councils across the country, whether red, yellow or blue. None are immune, and nearly all are having to make cuts and raise taxes to increase their revenue. Nationally, the model of local government finance is broken and it needs urgent reform through the multi-year settlements and greater emphasis on redistribution and tackling deprivation that the new government are talking about. We continue nonetheless to do everything we can locally, and despite what we may hear from members opposite later, I for one am proud of the way this authority continues to weather that storm. This year has been particularly challenging with a budget gap of almost 40 million, and I'm sure we all look forward to that time when we have greater certainty and clarity about the future of local government finance, which Councillor Jeffrey and many of the leaders have been calling for. A tremendous amount of hard work goes into setting the budget each year. Caroline Carter, our departing Head of Finance, has done a sterling job along with her team, and I want to thank her and all of them for their efforts. But more broadly, we couldn't do any of this without our people. Our hard-working staff, from social workers keeping children safe to bin crews collecting our waste, everyone who works in public service, on behalf of the people of this district, thank you. Your commitment and your dedication, your willingness to go the extra mile, we see it and we're grateful. To our elected members, to our trade unions, community groups and more than 1,600 members of the public who responded to this year's budget consultation, thank you. Your feedback has helped shape our proposals. We've listened to your ideas and your concerns, and your priorities are reflected in this document. Balancing a budget of this kind is not easy. 3/4 of all our funding goes to caring for vulnerable adults and children. They will always be our top priority. But that does put pressure on every other service. Every cause is important. Every case is a special one. And we have to do our best as an authority to balance these conflicting priorities. And sometimes that means tough long-term decisions have to be taken because it's the right thing to do. And this Labour Council will not shy away from that. And this year in particular, many valued officer colleagues have been offered the chance to take voluntary redundancy, and several hundred will be leaving us. Their contribution to this authority will not be forgotten, and we should be grateful to them for their service, even as we wish them the very best for their future careers or retirements. But when the wage bill is such a significant part of a council's budget, sadly painful measures like that do become necessary. We have a responsibility to keep this organisation functioning, continuing to deliver public services and supporting the most vulnerable who need us. To lead is to choose. Sometimes those choices can seem like between the devil and the deep blue sea, between deeper tax cuts and tax rises, deeper funding cuts and tax rises. But not to choose is worse. It's nothing less than a dereliction of our responsibility as elected members to choose to support people who need those services the most. As in previous years, council tax has had to go up, as the leader has alluded to, and we're mindful of the impact this will have on residents. This is not something that any of us want to do or get into politics to do, but to balance the base budget and avoid extending the gap between income and expenditure, let's be real, there is no choice. We've all seen that local government graphs of doom. If we don't do this, we'll end up in that position ourselves. And yet, as the leader has said, despite this year's increase, we expect to have the lowest council tax rate in West Yorkshire when all the local authority budgets are said and done. We're using but reducing our reliance on reserves. We're setting the authorities on a more sustainable footing, our financial position for years to come. And we're offering that lowest tax rate in West Yorkshire while still offering a huge range of public services without the charges being introduced in certain areas. And at this juncture, I want to come on to garden waste collections. With waste being such a significant part of the council's budget, we had to seriously consider how we could make those savings, but in a way that causes as little impact as possible. And that's why we opted to review garden waste collections rather than general waste or recycling. However, the feedback from members and residents was clear, and I want to thank everyone who sent in their views. We are a listening council, and the frequency of our collections will remain unchanged. And unlike 70% of authorities who now charge, we will continue to deliver that first-class service to residents free. And I'm immensely proud of that fact. Getting the basics right is crucial and a priority for this administration. And I'm proud that we continue to have services consistently nominated for national awards and indeed winning national awards. From our innovative children's services under the inspired leadership of Vicky Schofield and Councillor Isherwood, to environmental health, breaking new ground with new protections and new prosecutions to keep the public safe. We are a well-run and efficient council, and we should be proud of our record. But a budget is also about vision, not just performance. A vision for what kind of district we want to create. Increasingly now we hear the siren voice of right-wing populism. Not just Trump on the global stage, but nationally and locally here too. Parties like Reform offering simple solutions to complex problems. The road ahead is dark and difficult, and they'd have us turn back, even leave it to take the easy choice. They would have us turn away from the tough decisions, ignore the science, the views of experts, roll back on the cause of human progress. be it in tackling the climate crisis, be it tackling equality and diversity programmes, opposing improvements to workers' rights, rolling out the red carpet for dictators. We must fight for the fairer, greener future that they would seek to deny us. And in this chamber, we must continue to act in the interests of all our diverse communities, because if we don't, no one else will. That's why I'm proud of this budget, and I'm proud of this Labour group. Not one step backwards, not 1 inch of ground ceded to the populists. We must reject the disinformation and the division mongers. We can't listen to the voices who would have us place our heads in the sand and ignore the problems of the world and our district, a world we're a part of. Locally, we must and will continue to play our part, unashamed of our principles and resolute in our convictions. And this budget does just that. We're not shying away from taking action on the climate emergency. We will advance green energy schemes like decarbonising Sunline Leisure and schools, schemes that help our environment even as they save the taxpayer money. We must continue to support the transition to electric vehicle charging that will improve air quality and save fuel costs. We must continue to invest in nature recovery because future generations deserve a cleaner, greener environment than that which we inherited. And yes, that means continuing to fight for the country park at Welbeck that we all want to see. We will not see our district left behind for the sake of short-term populism. Yes, the road ahead may be dark and difficult, but faithless is he who says farewell when the road darkens. We will face the future, not 1 step backwards, only forwards. That's why we're investing in our district's future, from the 3 million in improvements to parks to improve play areas and accessibility for children right across the district, tens of millions for regeneration for our city and town centres, and urban greening to make them healthier, greener spaces. Millions of pounds for schools, to repairs, to school buildings. But as well as the big schemes, we're maximising our impact as an authority with targeted investment in the little things that matter to people and are of tremendous importance. Be that verge hardening to tidy up neighbourhoods, highways improvements to deal with potholes, active travel schemes to provide more opportunities for cycling and walking. And there's much, much more listed in the dozens of capital schemes in this budget. Mr Mayor, today there are no budget amendments from the other parties, no other ideas put forward. Only Labour has a vision for Wakefield, our towns and villages. Only Labour has a plan to get us through these challenging times, and only Labour will deliver that fairer, greener future for everyone. We all, whatever our party, long for a day when local government will be financed properly. But don't let anyone in this room tell you this isn't a progressive budget. Many of the measures in here will make our residents' lives better, they'll make our area a better place to live. That's why, Mr Mayor, I support the budget, and I urge all colleagues to do so. Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed. As the leader of the Wakefield Conservative Independent Group, I would now invite you to respond to the Cabinet's budget proposals.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think some of them speeches probably recycled from last year, so well done. And in keeping with tradition, apart from Councillor Gert, I've also pre-prepared my speech as well. But while listening to that speech, I thought Councillor Jeffrey's speech was almost like a farewell speech, like it was your last council meeting, or there was some leadership contest going on in the background that we weren't aware of. You know, some the shout-outs and stuff like that. I thought maybe it's your last council meeting. But anyway, let's continue with it, and I'll address this. So basically, I will place on record, thanks to the council officers who prepare these budgets, and it is the council officers who do the bulk, 99.9% of the work, particularly Caroline Carter and her team, who all opposition members have met with on a number of occasions and have shown excellent understanding of the budgetary areas and made sure that we were all informed of all the changes that were taking place, including the council tax rises. So on behalf of the Conservative group as well here, I would like to place on record my thanks to Caroline and the best wishes for the future in what you do. So, but that's where it ends really, and this is another year, another special number, 4.9%. And you should have joined maybe perhaps your colleagues across in Bradford and taken the plunge, and maybe, if you thought your budgets were, you were that honourable and, money making and doing all the things that you promised a year upon year to do, you should have tried 10% and gone to the public and said to them, instead of consulting 1,600 people, consult all 300,000 plus of them and ask them which person is going to, maybe you can afford it, but which person here is sat in this chamber is happy with increasing council tax again every single year? Oh, it's a hard decision. This is the hardest budget. We've heard them all before. Every year, the same information gets recycled out. And you can say what you want. Wait till you face the public with that. You've got a gap year, but you know what's coming. And that's what's going to happen, is because the reality is, it's a Labour government now. It has been. It's nearly a year now. It's nearly a year of a Labour government. You've got a Chancellor, many different promises made, and I'll quote some of them. But this is another maximum rate increase. Why wasn't it 1.9? Did your calculator end at 4.9% all the time? Why not 1.9? Why not 3.9? Why is it always the maximum amount every single year, including when Labour was last in government? When Labour were last in government, there were 2 rises of council tax were around 9 to 10%. 2 years of rises. So they can't pretend. So what was happening in them years? So the reality is, when we can quote the £1.50 or whatever rise in there, it's just another rise in council tax for people who are already paying enough. And just this week and the last week, most of Wakefield residents who are paying Yorkshire Water electricity bills on the lowest rate electricity bills are paying something like £160 to £300 extra. That's Band-Aid properties under a Labour government. So you can blame who you want. If you want to nationalise them, go and nationalise them. Gas and electric, the 3rd increase under the Labour government, 3rd increase. Train travel gone up again. Mobile phone bills gone up. Insurance. And I say this, and I'll say this openly, and I don't hold the Labour government responsible for all of those. However, the fact is that these increases are taking place under a Labour government on top of people's household budgets that are already squeezed, on top of the fact that most people are going to come out of fixed rate interest on their mortgages, which was 1.9 to 3.9, and go up to what the lowest rate was after the last Bank of England was something like 5.2%. On top of that, that's what's going to happen, and we can laugh and joke about it. Not everybody's got that sort of money, and some people haven't paid their mortgages off. That's the reality. If somebody's finding that funny, you should come and explain yourself why you're finding it funny. That's the reality for people in this district. That's people who have to pay their bills, and people who are on top of that, because of the changes in the way renting's done. Rent has increased massively in Wakefield. It's increased massively, where 2-bedroom house used to be around 450. The same 2-bedroom house is £700, and you're lucky if you can get that. All them increases that you're pretending that they're not being met by rich people, they're being met by ordinary working people, people who are now having to take 2nd, 3rd jobs to make ends meet for something that actually they're not getting much in return. And that's the reality. If we look, some of your numbers didn't match up, and I think you need to answer this. In the press, Councillor Jeffrey said there was £88 million budget deficit projected over the next 5 years for Wakefield Council. Who's responsible for that? It just hasn't appeared overnight, has it? Where did that budget deficit come from? And the other thing is, like you said, 35.8 million this year, but every year you've done that. And I remember it was in the Wakefield Express, I don't know, I think it was yourself that reported in it, you'd met with the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. I've met with Rachel Reeves, really very nice photo with her, put it on my Facebook or whatever. But what was the conversation? What did Rachel Reeves agree? What do you get out of her? A cup of tea? Because that's all here in Wakefield. In fact, it's costing you £1.5 million mortgage of your own government. National insurance increase, that's a fact. We all know it. And that's the reality of the situation. And the other reality is lying to people as well. Not you, not people in here. I'm sure most of you are honourable enough not to lie. But you should be honourable enough to ask Keir Starmer what he meant when he said, in the last general election, yes, you heard that right, not a penny more on your council tax. Penny what? What was he talking about? The council tax freeze for 1 year. When is that going to be implemented in the 5 year of the Labour government? Because it hasn't been implemented this year, and that's exactly what was said in the election time. we're not going to increase tax, we're not going to do this, we're going to rob pensioners, and we're going to promise you stuff that we're not going to deliver. Absolute rubbish. And you talk about, one of you should stand up and he said, that's what he said, or we can play it. Go and listen to it. That's exactly his words that he said. What was he on about? Which council tax? Was he talking about another country? But that's the reality of the situation. And in that reality, all four, it's your council, it's your government, all four of the MPs are yours, including 2 of them in the cabinet, 1 of them at senior level, so you can't even hide behind that as well. Go to Yvette Cooper and ask her what he meant.
Councillor Ahmed,
direct access.
Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to make a point and you're making it very well, but can I ask you please to direct the points directly to the budget of the Cabinet? Thank you.
I'll direct to I'll keep it, but that is part of the point, isn't it, Mr. Mayor?
I think you've made that point very well. So if I can now ask you then to focus on responding to the Cabinet's budget.
The point is that, and the Mayor's Labour as well. So who's left to blame? So one of you can stand up and say, it's our government now, so next 4 years, we won't increase council tax anymore. Come and say it. Say, it's not for the next year. Let's not go further. And that's the reality of it in here. And we know that this isn't just the beginning of the more damage that the Labour government are proposing on there. We know that some of the things that are being proposed in the government are going to impact on councils, and they'll continue to impact on this council as well. And this will mean, and you'll see it, in the next 5 years, while this Labour government is in, the safeguard that was put in by the coalition government, if we've done one thing, was making sure it was a 4.9% maximum increase. Every single person in this district, and some of you won't be able to see it because you'll lose in 2026, is you will realise that you will again increase council tax 5%, 5%, 5%, and you'll say it's a hard decision, and we don't want to pass with protecting frontline services, but we're wasting £5 million on climate change, when the fact that carbon is mainly Chinese, Indians and Brazilians producing it in England, but we'll make people in Wakefield pay for that. We can do so-called equality and diversity schemes. I won't even go into this because I don't want to turn it into an issue, but I did a freedom of information request on the makeup of the council, the staffing makeup at the higher level, and if that's equality and diversity, I think you need to go look back and look at it again. So the reality is that in opposing this budget, I believe that Wakefield taxpayers are being ripped off, and they're being ripped off for a number of years, and the same excuses have been done every year. So what I suggest next year when we do a council tax increase, what we do is we just pre-record the speeches, put our mobile phones on and just go home. It's going to be the same rubbish that comes out again. And that's the end of my speech.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Does any member wish to ask a question or comment on the proposed budget? Before doing so, may I remind members that speeches must be directed to the Cabinet's budget proposals. Questions will be addressed in the Leader's right to reply before the vote is taken, unless I consider the question requires an immediate response, in which case the Leader or the Deputy Leader will be allowed to reply. Questions are subject to the normal 5-minute rule, and members are only permitted to speak once on the proposals. I remind members that they may speak again only to raise a point of order or a personal explanation under Rule 36. Once I consider that there has been sufficient debate on the budget proposals, I will invite the Leader to exercise her right of reply before putting this matter to a recorded vote. Questions or comments, please?
Well, I hadn't written a speech, I never do. And I wasn't even sure I was going to stand up and speak. But there's been a few things said, so I think I will. It's difficult writing a budget. This is my 3rd year that I've been to one, and those of you who were here for the first one will remember that Councillor Gordon was putting forward an amendment, allegedly. and wrote it and then didn't turn up and it was dumped on me. And that by the way, that was the first time I experienced the kindness, and I think I should mention this, the kindness of Councillor Graham Isherwood, because it was embarrassing for me. And it still rankles a little bit. So last year I didn't bother because it was still a little bit too raw. This year I thought, well, you know, I better give it a go. So I started to look into it. And this is something that I think should be mentioned because I don't think many people will realise it. In order to knock off 1%, just 1% off the council tax bill, you've got to make savings in the region of 1.8 million just for 1%. And how do you make them savings without affecting frontline services? Now, I'm not an accountant, you know, and what might take an accountant an hour to do would probably take me 3 or 4 hours because I'd have to double check my work and then triple check it and then check it again just to be sure I've got it right. You know, so it takes me a long time. And let's be straight about it. Let's be honest about it. If I'd have written an alternative budget or an amendment budget, you guys wouldn't even have read it because you're going to put your own budget forward. So it's a hell of a lot of work for me on my own. Denise, with all due respect, you haven't written this budget. It's been written by the council officers. So for me to do it on my own is a lot of work. And then at the end of it, if I could have found, and it isn't an if I could have found those savings without affecting frontline services, would the right thing been to just knock it off the council tax? Or would the right thing be to reinvest it into the council and improve the services? It might be an unpopular thing to say, and I might be doing myself a disservice here. I might lose my seat in 2026, but I'm not right bothered. You know, I either get re-elected or I don't. You know, my view, and I don't know how many of you will agree with this, is as councillors, as elected councillors, our first and most important priority is the constituents within our ward. The second one is to the residents of the district as a whole. And then it becomes party politics. The first two take far precedent over party politics for me. So that's the reason I didn't put one forward. And the other thing, we have to pay for services. We just have to pay for them. They have to be done. And it might be unpopular, you know, and I don't particularly appreciate having to pay an extra 4.9%. But if we're going to have a council that is able to run and have the services, then we're going to have to pay it, you know. And yes, it's now a Labour government, and yes, it's nearly been in a year. But you can't correct everything in a year. Come next year, if we're still doing 4.9%, then I might have something different to say, you know. And I think when I watched Keir Starmer come out with that twaddle about read my lips, you know, council tax won't go up, I just shook my head and I thought, you're dreaming, lad. You know, and I'm sure you did as well, Denise. You must have thought, oh God, what have you said that for? That's going to come back and bite us, you know. But he said it, and it was to get votes, and that's what we're all about.
Councillor Gertz, I'm afraid your 5 minutes is up.
I'll wind up then.
If I could ask you to sit down, please, because you're over your 5 minutes. I apologise.
All right then. All right, thank you. And that's the other thing, in it, I only get 5 minutes. It's not long enough.
Any other questions or comments, ladies and gentlemen? No. Excuse me. Thank you, colleagues. That concludes the debate. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not supporting this budget today. Our party promised change and an end to austerity and an end to council tax rises, and that's what we all campaigned on during the general election, and all of that's been reneged on today. £29 million of savings is austerity, and yet again we're raising council tax by the maximum. We're expecting our residents to pay more every year for less. And this budget is nothing more than a litany of broken promises by this government. And some people may say they've only been in a year, but I have no faith things will get better with the choices already being made. They're attacking welfare. The government's refused to lift the two-child benefit cap, betrayed WASPy women, raised the bus cap and took the winter fuel allowance off vulnerable pensioners. And now they're going after those on disability benefits. And it's not change. I don't care what anybody says. It's a continuation of Tory austerity, and it's a disgrace. And we know what the consequences of austerity are. Various studies, including one by the LSE, showed that it led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, working class people and the most vulnerable in our society, the very people our party is supposed to fight for.
Councillor Williamson, can I just interrupt you for one moment, please? You need to make reference to the budget that's been put forward to you, which is the budget of Wakefield's cabinet to this council.
It's an austerity budget, and I was just talking about the consequences of austerity, Mr. Mayor.
Just one moment, please. The consequences of austerity is for another place. You need to talk about the budget that's been put forward here. If you continue to do that, that's fine. If you're going to talk about national issues and issues that we've no control over, and previous government, we will not be moving forward. In a moment, Councillor Sharp.
But those national issues influence what we're here to do today, Mr. Mayor. Right, and austerity, this is an austerity budget, and austerity damages working class communities, whether it's done nationally or locally. And I'm not coming in here after my working class residents are struggling through benefit cuts from national government and then coming in here and voting for more austerity at a local level and voting for another hike in council tax, pushing my residents further into financial hardship. I just won't do it. And we need to be saying to the government to end austerity once and for all. Right? And I want to come to the question of job cuts, because our group was misled by his own cabinet. We were told explicitly there'd only be a small number of job cuts, and then I had to find out from the press that it was at least 250. And then, if what the leader said today about there's no more need for compulsory redundancies, I really welcome that. But after reaching out to the Chief Financial Officer at the end of last week, I was told there was still 14 full-time jobs at risk of compulsory redundancy if we pass that budget today. And my position is one job lost is one too many. We're all supposed to be trade unionists. We have to be members of a union to stand for election. Some on these benches are full-time union officials who, if they vote for this budget, are putting their own members out of a job. Standing up for working people is an intrinsic part of my politics. I used to be a shop steward. I'd have fought tooth and nail against any job cuts. And I don't see why now I'm just in public office I have to forsake those principles, right? And I will always stand up for workers, and that's it. And I just want to touch on the top and the garden waste services, because I actually found it sickening that you were all claiming credit for saving those services. They were only at risk because they were in our budget. That's it. Our party proposed to cut them, and then you were all going on social media claiming credit that we'd managed to save them and we weren't cutting them anymore. It's a dishonest and cynical way of doing politics, and I don't want any part of that. It wasn't councillors who saved those services, it was our residents who filled in the consultation and kicked off and were angry because we were even considering
15 seconds to go.
Well, I'll just conclude. I'm not voting for this budget. I'm voting against austerity. I'm voting for my residents. I'm voting in line with my conscience. I'm voting against this budget.
Councillor Sharp. Excuse me. Whoa. Can I, just 1 second, who's working this meeting, you or me? Because if you want to do it, I don't want you to escort him out at all. Can I respectfully ask you not to shout, please? As I pointed out at last month's meeting to people that were barracking across the chamber, don't do it. If it happens again, I will ask you to leave. Thank you. It is very disrespectful, but I take that point. Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll just echo everything that Councillor Williamson said. It's taken a lot of guts for him to stand and say that. The point that I would make is we've got to a point where the Tories were so bad that overwhelmingly we've got 56 Labour councillors, and because there's too many of them, not all their points of view are heard. So even if the leader or the deputy leader wanted to come to a meeting and say, we're cutting 250 jobs, what do you all think? They would never do that. It's an insular group of people that run the show in this council, and it's people with no business background, no economic or growth faculty or relevance. Denise asked at the start of this meeting, you know, yes, we didn't put a budget, but that was
Councillor Sharp, can I ask you to make comments in relation to the budget?
I'm doing it.
1 second. Well, at the moment, you're making comments about individuals.
But that's because you keep correcting or trying to correct what you think is going to happen next. So we were told that due to cost and officer pressures that we couldn't make an alternative budget. That's what we were told. I've got an email to say that. So I apologise that that's not the information that you were given, but that is the truth. To stand up, Jack, and say we're going to collect your rubbish for free, it's really disingenuous because people pay every year for them to their rubbish to be collected. Some people pay over £4,000, and that's part of the service that they pay for. So please don't ever stand and say we're keeping your refuse collections and it's going to be free, because that's what you pay for in your council tax. That is part of your council tax. You asked for suggestions of how we could save money or an alternative. What I would do is I'd just get rid of the culture department. The Rhubarb Festival can all be rolled up into Michael's portfolio regeneration. You'd literally just wipe out. If you want to save money, that's what you need to do. We have to fund it anyway. Yes, we get grants, but it doesn't cover anywhere near as much as what it would do normally. Just wipe out that culture budget. You've got someone in charge of it that's literally got no experience, no competence. We just want competence in this council. It's not hard to ask for that.
Can you not talk about individuals?
I'm talking about the budget. So we want people that know what they're doing, that can deliver a balanced budget. We just don't currently have that. When you say that you put a survey out and 1,600 people replied, that's great, but when you've got people in the district of 380,000, that's not even 1% of people that have replied. So you say you were going to cut garden services, you say that you were going to close the libraries or cut the library times down, but you were never going to do that anyway, because if you were going to do it, you just would have done it. It's as simple as that. And yeah, for anyone that votes against this, because you know that it's going to lead to more austerity, more cuts, more people that are going to be poorer as a result, well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I have one more person on my list and then we're moving to a vote. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, we've debated budgets for many years while I've been on this chamber. Councils up and down the country will be raising council tax as much as they can because we're all in dire straits. We know that up and down the country, whether it be Conservative, Lib Dem, Independents, Greens, no overall control, because we know we're crying out for funding local government. This party, the Labour Party, are giving us options now, and they're going to give us a fairer settlement moving forward. We know that. But the fact that round this chamber, opposition members of opposition parties couldn't put an alternative budget together between them. Councillor Sharp just mentioned there was no resource to do it. Officers were shaking their head when you said that, Councillor Sharp. To start to say that there's been no consultation in our group on this budget is unbelievable when we've gone through round table discussions where everyone's had a chance to have their say, and to come at the last minutes to say I'm not happy with this, I don't know where people's coming from. Yes, we've all got conscience. We need to have a balanced budget to supporting the frontline services that the Wakefield district deserves. If we do not set this budget today, what impact will that be on to social services, children, young people, to highways, to our environmental health and garden waste? There's so much at risk here, and just to come in here now and say I'm not voting against it because I've got a conscience. We've all got a conscience, but at the end of the day, everything is going up, things need paying for. So that is why I'm supporting this budget. And it's quite true, to come at the last minute and start saying that I'm not for an austerity budget. This is not about austerity. The only thing that's been mentioned today is national issues. Nobody can actually put anything on local issues when they're spoken, and that's why I support this.
That concludes the debate on the proposed budget. Councillor Jeffrey, as mover of the Cabinet recommendations, you now have the right of the reply to debate. You have 5 minutes for your right of reply, should you wish.
Well, really, there's not a lot to say. You couldn't come up with anything. I do admire the fact, Peter, that you admitted that you'd gone through it and you couldn't find it. You've all had briefings from the finance officer, but you're probably too busy doing other things to even take the time to do it. And as for voting against the budget, Jake, I think it's totally irresponsible of you. You come at the last minute, you're busy with your other jobs, you come at the last minute, send it...
Yes, Councillor Ahmed. Thank you for that. Can I ask you not to debate or raise personal issues against individuals in this chamber, please? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. As required, we will now take a recorded vote on the agenda items 5 and 6, the revenue budget, the council tax proposals, capital and investment strategy, capital programme and treasury management reports. I will now ask the Chief Legal Officer to take the recorded vote. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I'll take the recorded vote in the normal way by reading out the name of the councillor. If you could then indicate clearly whether you are for, against, or you wish to abstain on the Cabinet's budget proposals. Councillor Ahmed. Against. Councillor Ali. Councillor Antcliffe. Councillor Eyre. Councillor Bates. Councillor Bryan. Councillor Carrington. Councillor Collins. Councillor Craig. Councillor Farmer. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Forster. Councillor Fraser. Councillor Garbett. Councillor Girt. Councillor Graham. Thank you. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Haslam. Councillor Hayes is not here, is she? She's not arrived, no. Councillor Hemingway. Councillor Stuart Heptonstall. Councillor Hepworth. Councillor Margaret Isherwood. Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Laura Jones. Councillor Melanie Jones. Councillor Keith. Councillor Law. Thank you. Councillor Masterman. Don't think Councillor Mayhew's here, is he? No. Thank you. Councillor Medford. Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Morley. Councillor Andy Nichols. Councillor Deb Nichols. Councillor Page. Councillor Pickersgill. Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Rowley. Councillor Salim, Councillor Scott, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Shaw, Councillor Smith, Councillor Speak, Councillor Spate, Councillor Swift, Councillor Tennant, Councillor Tully, Councillor Vickers, Councillor Wallace, no, thank you, Councillor Walton, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Wilton, Mr Mayor.
Abstain.
Abstain. Madam Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Just bear with us while we add that up. Yeah. So, yeah, it's yeah.
That is carried. The vote was 46 in favour of the proposals, 7 against and 2 abstentions. Thank you, colleagues. And that, colleagues, concludes the meeting. Can I remind members that the next meeting of Council will be held on the 9th